Hello, my name is Zeno, and I've been doing a series of videos on errors in Ra's interpretation. The question I got for the one about channels was, does that mean you start with the centers and then go to the channels? And I did another video, the sound was not right, but I was very interested in saying, I think channels conceptually are going to interfere with your greater understanding. It is not one thing, oh, you combine these two hexagrams and then you get a third thing, another meaning. But the problem is you have actually not got the two hexagrams. And so let's go back a step. If you study Zen human design, your step is definition, type, and mode. That's doing and waiting. And then the next one is definition type, no definition, up to quadruple split, and then you get to look at how centers function. Centers, also undefined centers, as being very central to one's understanding of conditioning. Okay, so you get, as far as centers, then the next thing actually is gates. And that means you have the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And so you get to reference in an I Ching. Now, I think that your understanding of how a channel works is based on the dynamic of the centers, absolutely. And don't skip that part. The next thing is to really cogitate, what is this hexagram about? And that is a longer study. Then beyond the gates and hexagrams, you get planets activating the gates. And there you have something really important. It's one reason that I realized Ra's original channel name thing was a big problem, because he had done that Ravi Ching, planets fixing the lines, which is altogether a totally different mess. And because you would have planets associated with separate lines, you would mix up that your understanding of the channel is actually how these two planets might communicate and interact in the two different centers. And it's nuts to be looking at, oh, Mars activates line 3, and Mars is not in this channel, and therefore we don't have to worry. And therefore that is a quite big problem in your understanding. I would say, if you take my word as a starting point, skip the channels altogether. You will not penetrate how they work just based on Ra's naming it and combining it with a little keyword. So I thought what I should do is give you an example. I have the 5710. So that is spleen, 5710, G center, connecting to each other. Okay, spleen, health, well-being, feeling good, connected to identity, love, direction, and what we say this is, okay, I am going to give you a couple of things that I think are very helpful maybe for you. First, I would say that it changed in time. That means 5710, having the identity of what was attractive about me was my body. I danced, I did yoga, I looked at all those different ways of being in the body and identified with it. Now, as a meditator, you maybe already know that your body is not who you are. And so now we are going a little bit later in my life. I'm a bit older. And now I say, okay, my body is really in trouble here. Now what does this mean? Okay, so we have a connection to the G center, love, and higher value spirit. And what came up to me in dealing with this illness was that spirit embodies the form. So that's where I got to next. Absolutely right. That I need to understand that the healing modality is related to trusting spirit, trusting how love might work. And I would say that it is quite important for you to think about how those two centers could work in any given person. Now, because I got so, let's say, disabled, I really had a mission to figure out health, and that's spleen. I am not having a design to do, but loving the life is a very important piece of this. And so Ra called this perfected form of design for survival. And I have encountered people with this channel who, I don't know about the survival mechanism. Ra's joke at the time was, if you sit on an airplane, sit next to somebody with a 5710, because they will be able to help you survive. Now, I look at me flying on an airplane, and I tell ya, nobody should sit next to me. You have an accident, and there I am, useless. I am not to sit by the window. I am not to put on somebody else's face mask. So that design for survival, cute name, but he made stuff up. And because he had the 5710, it was something he wanted to identify, that spleen is something easy if you have a definition. So I would say spleen being defined, yes, that does help. But just to go on a little of how I work with centers, it might be great to have a spleen defined somehow to the throat, anywhere, that your health system is something that keeps you kind of upbeat. But ultimately, what you have to understand is that how this spleen works is A, dependent upon how you were raised, and B, helping to keep a good feeling about who you are, but C, not a guarantee that you won't deal with health issues. Anyway, since I've talked so much about myself, I have an undefined sacral center, and I do think this word vitality is quite critical and would help you to understand. Anyway, so in answer to the question, really, I think you should skip channels. You will have a lot easier time to understand the mechanism of a gate, a hexagram in one center, having an influence in another center, how it would be transformed. I also think that it is useful for you in thinking about how the centers work relative to the hexagrams, that there is mostly a higher value and then a lower value. That means when you would be looking at the hexagram and you would say, well, maybe that's not so wonderful. How is it going to transform this other hexagram? Quick example of that would be the 40 heart center to the 37 solar plexus. And what would we say? Solar plexus is an awareness. The heart center can be experienced, but it isn't about becoming identified with how the ego might disturb or something like that. 40-37, the 37 side is in the awareness, and therefore relinquishing or surrendering or letting go of the ego in order to see that somebody is a friend. That brings you into the awareness of the emotional nature, and that is quite important. So, thank you for listening, and ask me questions. It always could inspire me to do another video. So, I look forward to seeing what questions you might have.